WHO staff residence was attacked 3 times yesterday. Staff and their families, including children, were exposed to grave danger and traumatized after airstrikes caused a fire and significant damage. Israeli military entered the premises, forcing women and children to evacuate on foot toward Al-Mawasi amid active conflict. Male staff and family members were handcuffed, stripped, interrogated on the spot, and screened at gunpoint.
Now let's bring in Dr. Margaret Harris. She is a former spokesperson for the WHO, joining us live from Geneva. Dr. Harris, thank you so much for your time. And I have to start by asking you about this allegation from Israel. They went into the WHO offices in Deir al Balah because they thought that Hamas might be operating there. Do you know if Hamas was in fact operating at your offices in Deir al Balah?
Of course they were not. We are, WHO, the UN, all the staff are neutral parties, non-combatants. They do not support either side or work. What they do is provide aid. But as your reporter said, this is a story we hear over and over again whenever another atrocity is committed.
So,
an excuse.
I mean, is it just a made-up lie, or could there be any kind of basis to this allegation?
Certainly not for the UN staff and the work. It's got, as I said, international humanitarian workers are non-combatants. They do not work with either side. We don't allow arms on our premises. We don't allow any of those things because international humanitarian workers are neutral and they are protected by international humanitarian law because they are neutral. They are there to help the ordinary people in horrific circumstances like this.
You heard there the Israelis pretty much downplaying what went down during that attack. What have you heard from your colleagues about how this attack happened?
So certainly it's as described in the statement that the World Health Organization put out last night, that indeed the soldiers entered the premises and held people at gunpoint and strip searched them and committed all these violations that are not permissible under international humanitarian law.
So what was your reaction when you heard this from your colleagues about how they were treated?
Oh, certainly it was. As often, every meeting I was ever in, people said, every day it gets worse. You think this must be the worst day, and then it gets worse. But remember, since this war, 479 aid workers have been killed overall, and at least 107 have been killed just since the start of this year. And 1,500 health workers have been killed. So over and over again, the non-combatants, the people who are only there to help, who run towards danger in order to help others, they are the ones being killed.
And can you tell us how your colleagues are feeling today after what happened?
Well, of course, everybody, from what I've heard, but again, remember, I'm no longer working for the World Health Organization, so I am not in direct contact with those colleagues,
Sure.
But I'm certainly hearing of distress and anger that the work that needs to be done, particularly because the warehouse was destroyed as well. So the people, your human resources destroyed, but also the warehouse. So it's an attack on health infrastructure to try to stop the basic human right of health being provided.
Yeah. How important is this location for the operations of WHO?
That was a place that hadn't been attacked before. So that's why the guest houses were located there, in order to protect the very brave people who are working there every day. So again, as many, many people have repeated, it's just further indication that absolutely nowhere and no one in Gaza is safe.
Yeah. Do you know if this is going to impact the work of the World Health Organization now in Gaza going forward?
It's going to make it much more difficult, definitely. It's already been made so difficult by the blockade imposed by Israel since the beginning of March, and because just getting in medical supplies has been difficult. Some trucks have been able to get in, but it's tiny, tiny amounts. And the needs are enormous, as your correspondents have been describing. The starvation means that everybody is a lot sicker. If you're starving, you get all sorts of medical complications. If you're wounded and you're starving, your wounds won't heal. You get infections much more easily. So all the health needs are exploding at the very time the means to help them are being destroyed.
If I may, just a final question. I know you're no longer with the WHO, but have you heard any more about this staff member who's still detained by Israel? Is he okay?
I've not got any of that information. But do keep in touch with colleagues at WHO. I am sure they're anxiously awaiting news.
Yeah, of course. Dr. Margaret Harris, thank you so much for your time here on TRT World.
That's my pleasure.